Imagine waking up one morning to discover that an entire village is gone. Not destroyed, not evacuated, just erased. Imagine soldiers marching into a battlefield and never returning. Not as prisoners, not as casualties, but as names that simply stop existing in records. Imagine ships crossing calm seas, only to be found drifting days later, perfectly intact, yet stripped of every human soul. These are not legends. These are not myths. These are real historical disappearances, documented, investigated, and still unexplained. History is built on evidence, dates, records, witnesses, remains. But there exists a darker category of history, one that resists documentation. These are events where people disappear so completely that even trained investigators are left with nothing but questions. No confirmed cause, no final resting place, no resolution. Across continents and centuries, entire communities, military units, crews, and explorers have vanished under circumstances that defy logic, preparation, and survival instinct. In this documentary, we examine true, recorded disappearances, cases acknowledged by governments, historians, and researchers, where the trail ends abruptly. This is part 2, and every story you are about to hear is real. Part 1. Entire communities that vanished. Throughout history, communities have fallen to war, famine, and disease. But what unsettles historians most are cases where communities did not collapse. They simply disappeared. No battle, no warning, no aftermath. The first village that vanished, Angikuni Lake, Canada, 1930. In November of 1930, fur trapper Joe LaBelle traveled through the frozen wilderness of northern Canada near Angikuni Lake, a region known for its isolation and extreme climate. He was familiar with the Inuit settlement located there. He had visited before. He knew the people. He expected warmth, conversation, and life. Instead, he found silence. The village stood intact. Homes were upright and undamaged. Food supplies were still stored. Weapons leaned against walls. But every single inhabitant was gone. There were no signs of struggle. No blood. No footprints leading away, despite fresh snow. Even more disturbing, sled dogs were found dead, still tied, suggesting no organized migration. In an environment where survival depends on preparation, abandoning supplies and animals made no sense. When authorities investigated, they discovered something even more unsettling. The village cemetery had been disturbed. Several graves were open. The bodies were missing. Extensive searches were conducted by ground teams and aircraft. No survivors were found. No migration path was identified. No explanation fit the evidence. To this day, the disappearance of the Angikuni Lake village remains unresolved. One of the most chilling cases of communal vanishing ever recorded. The second village that vanished, Kuldhara, India, early 1800s. Kuldhara was once a prosperous village in the desert region of Rajasthan, India. Historical records describe a well-organized settlement with advanced water systems and stable agriculture. Then, sometime in the early 19th century, something extraordinary happened. Overnight, the entire population left. Houses were abandoned. Temples remained untouched. Personal belongings were left behind. There was no evidence of invasion, no famine, no plague. Local accounts speak of oppression and curses, but written records confirm only one undeniable fact. The village was emptied suddenly and completely. What makes Kuldhara especially unsettling is what happened afterward. Despite centuries passing, the village was never resettled. Attempts to inhabit the area reportedly failed, as residents left after experiencing unease, fear, and unexplained disturbances. Kuldhara remains a place frozen in abandonment, a reminder that sometimes people leave not because they must, but because they fear what comes next. Part 2. Soldiers who vanished mid-mission. War produces chaos, destruction, and loss. But even in war, disappearances usually leave traces, casualty lists, battle reports, remains. These cases did not. The first military disappearance, the Norfolk Regiment, Gallipoli, 1915. During World War I, British forces launched the Gallipoli campaign against the Ottoman Empire. Among them was a unit of the Norfolk Regiment. Eyewitnesses from Allied forces described a strange phenomenon during the advance. A dense, low-hanging cloud settled over the battlefield. The soldiers marched into it, and they were never seen again. There were no gunshots, no screams, no retreat. After the war, when remains were returned from Turkey, none belonged to the missing regiment. Turkish authorities denied capturing them. No burial sites were identified. Official military records still list the soldiers as missing in action. A battalion did not fall in battle. It vanished. The second military mystery, the Dyatlov Pass Incident, Soviet Union, 1959. In January 1959, 9 experienced hikers embarked on an expedition into the Ural Mountains. They were trained, well-equipped, and familiar with extreme conditions. When they failed to return, search teams were dispatched. What they found raised more questions than answers. The group's tent had been cut open from the inside. Footprints showed that the hikers fled barefoot into sub-zero temperatures. Some bodies were found with massive internal injuries, yet no external trauma. Others showed signs of radiation exposure. Several were missing eyes and tongues. The Soviet investigation concluded with a vague and chilling statement, an unknown compelling force. Decades later, despite modern analysis, no explanation accounts for all evidence. The mountains remain silent. Part 3. Ships that sail without souls. The ocean is vast, unforgiving, and largely unexplored. But even at sea, disappearances typically leave wreckage or distress signals. These ships did not. The first ghost ship, Mary Celeste, 1872. In December 1872, the merchant ship Mary Celeste was discovered drifting in the Atlantic Ocean. The ship was seaworthy. Cargo was untouched. Supplies were sufficient. The captain's log was orderly. But the crew, 10 people, including a child, were gone. The lifeboat was missing, but there were no signs of panic or storm damage. No explanation satisfactorily explains why an experienced crew abandoned a functioning vessel. The Mary Celeste remains one of the greatest maritime mysteries in history. The second ghost ship, Orang Medan, 1947. In 1947, a Dutch cargo ship transmitted a distress call from the Strait of Malacca. The message was brief and horrifying. All officers, including captain, dead, possibly whole crew dead. When rescuers boarded the ship, they found bodies scattered across the deck, frozen in expressions of terror. No visible wounds, no confirmed poison. Before a full investigation could be conducted, the ship exploded and sank. Official explanations failed to account for the incident. The sea kept its secret. Part 4. Explorers who never returned. Exploration is driven by curiosity, ambition, and belief. But history records many who ventured into the unknown and never came back. The Arctic tragedy, the Franklin expedition, 1845. In 1845, Sir John Franklin led an expedition to chart the Northwest Passage. 2 ships, 129 men. None survived. Years later, remains suggested starvation, illness, and desperation. Some evidence pointed to cannibalism, but the full sequence of events remains unknown. The Arctic erased the story. The Jungle Mystery, Percy Fawcett, 1925. Explorer Percy Fawcett believed an ancient civilization lay hidden in the Amazon. He entered the jungle with his son and a small team. They vanished. Multiple rescue missions failed. Some searchers disappeared as well. No confirmed trace of Fawcett was ever recovered. The jungle did not explain itself. Part 5. Disappearances that defy modern logic. Even in environments with structure and records, people still vanish. Flight 19, United States, 1945. 5 American military aircraft disappeared during a training mission over the Atlantic. Radio transmissions suggested confusion, not distress. Despite a massive search, no confirmed wreckage was recovered. The ocean closed over the evidence. Across continents, climates, and centuries, the pattern remains the same. People disappear. Their surroundings remain. History is left incomplete. These are not stories with endings. They're interruptions where evidence stops and silence begins. History does not always give us answers. Sometimes it only leaves behind absence, names that stop appearing in records, footsteps that end without direction, places that remember people even when people are gone. These disappearances remind us of something deeply unsettling, that the world is far larger, darker, and more mysterious than we like to believe. Not every story has an ending. Not every question finds truth. And perhaps the most frightening thought of all is that some people did not just disappear from places. They disappeared from understanding itself. If these stories stayed with you, if the silence disturbed you, then you're already walking the path of dew of dread. Subscribe and journey deeper into the shadows of history, where mysteries remain unsolved, truth is fragmented, and dread lingers long after the story ends. This is Dew of Dread, and here, the unanswered are never forgotten.